Okay, we are into week 3 and what I would call part 2 of the questions that I asked last week. I'm going to continue on in asking those this week, and that would be the following. What do leaders of change know about their team, and what must they discover about their team? And in terms of what we're looking at this week, I'm going to ask you to prepare for the course by having read the 5 dysfunctions, Overcoming the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, a field guide for leaders, managers, and facilitators. And this may feel redundant to you, but I really feel like there's some really important information here that, it's one thing, and I value reading the leadership fable, but there's just this constructive element that begins to take place in a book like this. So I really want you to dive into this information, read it closely, read it carefully, prepare this week by reading fully and critically engaging with the text, okay? In terms of understand, prepare, read the book. Understand. A couple of things that I think are going to be really important for you to take with you as leaders, whether it's in vocational ministry, faith-based nonprofit, or if you're in a situation where you're in secular employment, but you're taking this course to get a healthier understanding of organizational diagnosis and change management. There are some things I think you need to understand coming out of this book, very specifically focused on the needs that we have organizationally to overcome a lack of trust. If you're trying to create change or monitor change management and come up with healthy diagnosis, lack of trust, if you don't have trust, if you don't have the benefit of the doubt, you're in a lot of trouble organizationally. And in many ways, if you don't seek to establish trust, you're trying to solve problems in a vacuum, and that's never really a good thing. You've got to walk in relationship with people. And in order to establish trust, that involves walking in relationship. You've got to know your team, and you've got to understand how to overcome a lack of trust in your organization. And so this book is talking to that end. A second thing that I would say is you need to overcome unhealthy conflict. You got to have conflict in organizations. I think that this is probably one of the great lessons of my career that I've personally been learning, and God has continued to teach me. I've entered into phases, especially early on in my career, where you just want to avoid conflict or you don't want to have it. And I think that what has helped me is that I've walked into situations where I've actually had healthy conflict. Now, don't get me wrong. I've certainly been in situations where I've had unhealthy conflict. I mentioned this in a week prior. Like, one of the most confounding variables that we deal with in organizational leadership is people. So I've been a part of unhealthy conflict, and that sucks. I mean, that's really frustrating at times. But one of the things that helps with overcoming unhealthy conflict is actually participating in healthy conflict. Now, I'm not saying that you invite a fight that doesn't need to be there, but when you're noticing that perhaps as you're trying to come to a common understanding or to come to the same goals in an organization, and you're feeling tension, you're feeling dissonance, you got to talk that stuff out. You got to work toward having a healthy environment and not necessarily taking things personal, but just saying, look, we both want to get to the most healthy place for our organization if you sense that to be true. So work with that common outcome in mind. And that typically will help to lead to healthier forms of conflict. Another thing that we need to understand from this week's readings is the need toward achieving commitment toward a common goal or objective. That's a huge thing. If people don't know what the outcome, like, what are we driving toward? Where are we going? If the outcome is nebulous, if the outcome is enigmatic, it's a mystery, it's going to be hard to drive people toward that. You've got to be very tight and right on the common goal that you have. You got to articulate that. And you need to understand that there's a desire to achieve commitment toward that within the team dynamic. Team chemistry is huge in this. Another thing that we need to understand is the need toward embracing accountability within a team for the organizational good. Got to be accountable to something. And so, it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to put a plan in place. It's another to say, and we're going to be accountable to see how this goes. That we're going to need the full effort of the team to make this happen. And that's why I love the 5 dysfunctions of a team so much, because it really begins to help you to understand the concept of synergy, the idea that together we can accomplish more than any one individual can. That's a big part of organizational diagnosis and change management. So we need to make sure that we're embracing accountability within the team toward the organizational good or the organizational objective. And then finally, in terms of understanding, we need to focus on results association with the organizational plan of action. You can throw ideas out there, but if you're not going to measure and assess and seek to understand that, if it was successful or not, you're in trouble. That's one of my passions in my doctoral work, is actually kind of quantifying and assessing results and making taking an objective attempt to make a subjective decision on, did this work or not? Was this successful? Did the implementation of change that happened, how did it go? How could it have gone better? Where was it poor? Where was it strong? What would we want to do different in the future? These are all things that when you're collecting an organizational plan of action and you're benchmarking against something, it helps you in this process. Now, in terms of developing, again, you're practitioners. This is pragmatic. I'm a practitioner too. You got to be thinking to yourself, in what ways the organization that I possess a leadership responsibility in prepared and positioned to deal with the unhealth within an organization. You can be a contributing agent of change there. So think about your context and ask yourself how you can be a contributor positively toward that end. Lastly, you've got another discussion board this week. It's a little bit more. I think last week's was 500 words. This week's is 750 words. Turn that in by Thursday. Look to the online portal on where to submit that. And then you need 2 responses turned in by Sunday night as responses to the other posts that were put together by your colleagues. So I'll grade those, have your post up by Thursday, and have your responses to the other posts submitted by Sunday of this week. Any thoughts, any questions, any concerns, feel free to email me at rkozey@thechapel.com. God bless you, gang. I hope you're doing well. We'll talk to you soon.